Halo Infinite is finally here after the longest wait for a new entry in the franchise thus far. Over this time, expectations were at an all-time high despite the problems with Halo 5's campaign. And, incredibly, I think they've delivered. Halo is back. And so, my name is Same Token, and this is my review of Halo Infinite's campaign. Halo has always excelled in its sandbox gameplay, but Infinite takes that even further with an open world that has been handled exactly how I expected. Small bases to liberate, marines to save, mini-bosses to eliminate, and items to find. In other words, a pared-back Ubisoft-style free roam. A departure from Halo's usual linear fare, encouraging us to explore a portion of a Halo ring at our own pace. Although smaller than a Far Cry map, it is still the biggest Halo map we've ever seen. Upon first hearing of this direction over a year ago, I was skeptical, yet, to my surprise, I love it. Liberating Marines is an exciting experience. It targets that feeling in Combat Evolved's second level, repeated multiple times across the map. Each scenario is slightly different. Maybe it's the topology of the map, or the composition of the enemies, or the vehicles available. But what remains the same is the freedom to approach it in any way you like. Run in with power weapons and make it easy for yourself. Or sneak around with a plasma pistol and hope for the best. It's all in your control. That may be the whole point of this genre, but in other games like this, I find myself defaulting to the same weapons and tactics every single time. But in Halo Infinite, I wasn't focused on optimizing play like that. I only sought for what would provide me with the most fun in that very moment, answering all those questions I'd usually have in a classic Halo level, like, what if I had a tank right now? Well, now you can, even if it does feel like cheating, especially when you roll up to one of the mini-bosses, and your AI companion starts telling you how evil and powerful they are, only for you to instantly obliterate them from existence. And because enemies spawn in so far away, you can take them out before they even have a chance to fight back. Equipping a sniper and silently flanking feels like something they would have used as a scripted sequence previously, yet now it's all organic and very satisfying. Now, I would like to note that there's something funky going on with enemy despawns. Banshees would sometimes just disappear during a firefight, and so would Phantoms once they're destroyed. However, when everything's working correctly, tackling enemy bases gives me a dopamine rush every time. All those Marines watching you deliver on those legends. Infinite really knows how to empower the player. Once you've finished saving those Marines or killing those mini-bosses, you're left with that open world to travel. Time to grab a warthog, right? This is Halo after all. And, well, yes, you can totally do that, and it's fun, but the handling leaves something to be desired. It lacks a certain weight that means you end up bouncing around a lot. Not a problem in smaller arenas where that's all part of the fun, but it can be frustrating when you're off-roading to far-flung corners of the open world. And then there's the tank. Oddly, Halo Infinite has regressed this otherwise functional vehicle. The transition between turning and moving backwards feels weirder than previous renditions. Driving it is a chore. While we're at it, choppers and banshees are okay, but they don't feel as good as they have done in the past. Ghosts, on the other hand, are excellent and are fantastic killing machines. And the new flying vehicle, the Wasp, is excellent at covering large distances, even if it is a little weak. You'll probably find yourself falling out of the sky a lot, courtesy of those new shock weapons that disable you instantly. And when you do, we now have a new method of getting around on foot, the incredible grapple shot. I think this is Infinite's best addition to Halo's gameplay loop thus far. A grappling hook that essentially turns you into a 1,000-pound Spider-Man. Scaling Infinite's mountains and those weird hexagonal pillars is hugely entertaining. I can simply swing for hours with this thing. Plus, it's highly effective in combat with the ability to scoop up weapons from afar, hijack vehicles, and even launch yourself at enemies, finishing with a melee. The ultimate piece of equipment that dwarfs the usefulness of the other 3 additions, the drop wall, threat sensor, and thruster, which are all very situation dependent. The grapple shot is a multi-tool of death and travel. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times where vehicles are my preferred tool for the job. Infinite fortunately doesn't fall into the Saints Row 4 trap of vehicles becoming pointless and less fun than unfit. Plus, what really encouraged me to use vehicles more is the ability to spawn them at forward operating bases, Halo Infinite's interpretation of fast travel points that must be liberated from patrolling enemies. It is here that you can also kit yourself and any nearby marines with all the weapons you've unlocked, either by taking down mini-bosses or through earning something called Valor Points. Instead of being a currency you can spend on unlockables, Valor Points act more like a rank that is earned by completing certain objectives. As you earn more, you unlock more. So reaching 450 points nets you an assault rifle, and 1600 points a sniper rifle. Even spawnable human vehicles are unlocked this way, which is why I went on a huge detour from the campaign just so I could unlock the Wasp. Also to save my fellow Marines, of course. And when you're in the mood for exploration, there are plenty of worthwhile items to find scattered across the map. Spartan cores act as a currency with which to progress upgrade branches for your gear, such as adding a stun ability for the grapple shot, or beefing up your shields so you die less. Despite light RPG elements like this being a series first, it didn't feel out of place at all in the context of the open world. Audio logs and Forerunner artifacts can also be found, advancing the backstory that surrounds the events of Infinite. And skulls make a return so you can modify the game experience. I mean, how could they not? It's Halo, and this world is perfect for hunting small hidden collectibles. Then there's the armor lockers, where you unlock armor coatings and emblems for use in Halo Infinite's multiplayer. I'll be discussing this in more depth in my multiplayer review, but I have to say it feels lacking. A whole armor core complete with unlockable pieces would have been very nice, but even just individual parts for the existing cores would have felt more appropriate. As an open-world game set in a single location, the journey sometimes feels less expansive than in traditional linear Halo games. Think of all the places we visited in Halo 2, Earth, High Charity, several locations on a Halo ring, and even a Forerunner gas mining platform, all sorts of environments and color palettes. Although none of these maps were as large or as free as in Halo Infinite, clever skybox design created that much-needed feeling of scale. All of the classic games essentially occurred in corridors of varying sizes, funneling the player through the narrative. The feeling that something massive was going on out there was often a clever illusion. This type of design is incredibly effective for curated pacing and in-game storytelling, and thankfully, it's something that's also featured in Halo Infinite to a certain extent. We still don't see that wide variety of locations throughout the game, but narrative and gameplay-wise, Infinite's linear portions don't disappoint. Like in Halo 3 ODST, Infinite's open world acts as a hub for its linear narrative missions, except this time it's far more integrated. There are still obvious switches that will remove you from the open world and plonk you into a linear level, almost like a dungeon mechanic, and, funnily enough, they sometimes use actual switches. Although this doesn't teleport you to another area, there is a loading screen that makes the level feel ever so slightly disjointed. But there are plenty of narrative missions that mingle with the open world, some which take place entirely without loading, and one which takes place in points scattered across the map. The process of entering these linear sections aside, the levels themselves are everything I'd hoped. As much as I love Infinite's open world, I'm a linear gamer at heart. It was Combat Evolved, Half-Life, and Timesplitters 2 that all piqued my interest in video games in the first place. Thankfully, Halo Infinite excels in its linear gameplay sections. It's here you'll find your classic Halo journey. From the outset, I felt like a kid again, dying multiple times in the first mission, just trying stupid things and loving every moment. That intro sequence was the perfect setup for all the brilliant level design throughout the game. Each encounter was compelling, making good use of verticality so you can tactically apply the grapple shot in flanking maneuvers, and in performing awesome, yet completely unnecessary, stunts. One section late in the game stood out to me, where the player is ferried through several wave defense arenas in the vein of Fable 2's Crucible. A trope that can so easily be boring and repetitive, but when you have gunplay as good as Halo Infinite, it turns into a remarkable experience. If anything, it proves we need a firefight mode, and that is also thanks to the fantastic AI. Halo Infinite's friendly AI are goofy in the best way. Like in previous Halos, if you drive up next to them, they'll fill all the seats in your vehicle, and you can ride into the sunset, and/or off a cliff. Plus, now they'll form a squad and continue to follow you on foot, denoted by their radar blip becoming larger. With their default weapons, they will quickly die if you don't consider their well-being before running into battle with your thick armor and advanced energy shields, and their fabric. As such, it would have been nice to have the ability to control your squad in some way, at the very least giving basic wait, follow, and move to point commands, while still retaining their automatic behavior if you don't want to bother. Perhaps that would stop all those times they get crushed by ordnance, so clearly dropping in from above. Still, like in previous games, you can swap weapons with them, enabling you to really kit them out. As I mentioned before, forward operating bases can spawn in any weapon you've unlocked from mini-boss battles, and so it really is up to you how dangerous your Marine squad will be. My preference is the Arcane Sentinel Beam. A whole team wielding these things essentially makes you unstoppable. Like the tank, this is only fun for so long before feeling way too overpowered. Then, when you're not bending the rules to annihilate everything that moves, Halo Infinite's enemy AI are great fun to fight. Even on normal, they would sometimes get close to overpowering me, using flanking maneuvers, teamwork, and surprise grenade attacks to overcome their weak weapon damage and health. As a result, this might be my favorite Halo AI to fight thus far. At only a single point did I feel the challenge was artificial in one of the final boss battles. But in general combat, getting close to death would always be my fault, and this is a very good thing. Dying, knowing why, and then trying again is a staple of the classic Halo sandbox. Furthermore, the main boss battles are demanding, yet exhilarating and interesting experiences. You must think fast as they come at you hard, countering my usual playstyle of hopping around and hoping for the best. This trickles down to the mini-bosses, and, of course, the hunters. Man, Infinite's hunters are fantastic. In Combat Evolved, one shot of the Magnum in the back, and they were down. Satisfying, but lacking in challenge. In Halo Infinite, they are fearsome creatures. There's even a new hunter variant in one of the later battles, and all I'll say is, good luck. That was the single hardest hunter encounter in the entire franchise, forcing you to make good use of the grapple shot. And I can't wait to play it all over again on Legendary. Alone, of course, so no one can hear me cry. On a technical level, Halo Infinite succeeds as a next-gen title that is also expected to run on older hardware. Obvious concessions have been made due to the open nature of the level design, and you'll see imperfections like pop-in and visual artifacts if you look too closely. Though the cutscenes are dazzling, and materials and textures look stunning. So, while it's not the absolute best looking game of the year, to me, it's one of the most beautiful, and that's thanks to the art direction. I think they've cracked Halo's design language, blending styles from across the franchise together, from Combat Evolved to 3, Reach, 4, and even Halo Wars 2, melding the stark with the ornate. Rather than a tug of war, these two styles appealingly blend into a coherent and striking mesh. Forerunner structures once again have that mystifying divinity that was missing from Halo 5, touching on that brutalism we saw in Combat Evolved. Lens flares have been toned down, and we see a return of gold and amber in the color palette. This really feels like the inside of a Halo ring, and Forerunner weapons are more subtle, with fewer floating parts. Human designs are, I think, some of the best we've seen. Marines look excellent, as do human weapons, all of which appear to harken back to classic designs. I love the direction of Master Chief's Mjolnir armor, though I can understand it won't be to everyone's taste. It just has that simple, bulky, yet surprisingly nimble feel that I like to see in powered armor. Plus, Chief has a belt again, and I'm all for it. Taking the Banished from Halo Wars 2 was a fantastic idea that I think points the franchise in a very strong direction. Better still, their designs translate smoothly from the RTS with a distinctive red industrial theme. We're seeing what happens when the brutes, instead of the prophets and elites, oversee planning. Plus, I like how this carries over to their weapons. I mean, there is a literal giant spike launcher, made by a spacefaring alien. What more could you want? And when you fire it, it sounds punchy and powerful. In fact, this audio quality carries over to everything in Infinite. Halo Infinite's sound design really ties the experience all together. The angry horns and screeches from their Banished dropships is an instant classic. Hearing one of these things swoop in from behind gives me shivers. Everything from the grapple shot, to explosions, to ambience, all add a weight and depth to the gameplay experience. Even the dings from collecting an audio log or a skull are clear indicators that Halo is heading in the right direction thematically. There's a scale and importance to everything we hear. And I need to mention that the dialogue is one of the best in the series as well. Its timing is often impeccable. Plus the grunts are hilarious.
Should've paid more attention.
Finally, and I've said it in previous videos, but this soundtrack is phenomenal. It firmly shouts that it's a Halo game while carving its own path. As it plays automatically throughout the open world, there are so many moments where the music hits just right. You're out there, exploring at your own pace, and just as you stumble across this breathtaking open vista, the score begins, and I'm given this warm feeling I haven't felt in a video game in a very long time. All I can say is, I want more of this. The narrative is surprisingly powerful, creating an exciting setup for the future campaigns. This review is as spoiler-free as I can make it, and there's a load here to unpack that will be reserved for future videos. But I will say, many of the plot elements introduced near the end of the game could potentially change the course of the entire franchise. Now, it does mean Infinite has the side effect of having that Halo 2 feeling of just getting started. It took me a while in the final level to realize that it was just that, the final level. Still, before this, the storyline was very well paced, and there were some really great emotional beats. Reintroducing audio logs was a nice touch too. Halo 3 ODST also featured these collectibles, in that case telling a single narrative that enhanced the player's understanding of the main plot. Halo Infinite goes even further by having multiple story threads to follow. Tools like this are a great method of world building, adding a surprising amount of depth when they're implemented correctly, as I feel they are here. And we even see Forerunner audio logs found inside artifacts scattered across the map, though to avoid spoilers, I'll refrain from discussing their details in this video. Ultimately, Halo Infinite's campaign is one of my favorites in the series. It's far from perfect, but so is every Halo if you remove the rose-tinted glasses. And while I get a sense that the development of this game was disjointed, each portion is carefully crafted, and somehow they brought it all together into an amazing and coherent, if a little unusual, experience. You can tell they've focused on fun, and that's why I love it. Plus, the AI is fantastic, even if I'm not a fan of the final boss battle. New additions like the grapple shot add that unique touch to the gameplay loop I think 343 Industries have needed since they took over the franchise, and I hope to see it become a Halo staple. Plus, the storytelling is a return to form, and the pacing is a huge improvement too. I think that's essential for narrative-driven games. Honestly, the biggest criticism I have of the campaign overall is the lack of co-op at launch. My wife and I love playing open-world games together. It's what made me adore Far Cry 5, a game I honestly probably wouldn't have played if it wasn't for its cooperative play. To have the same ability in Halo Infinite will really take it up a notch for me. Fortunately, co-op is confirmed to be coming, which will address that issue. I just hope next time around we'll see a campaign with more varied environments. Halo Infinite will act as the base for the next 10 years worth of Halo, and I'm glad of that. It's a strong starting point. I can't wait to see how this campaign evolves graphically as the engine is improved. I especially hope to see ray tracing added somewhere down the line. But taking in the whole picture, I think Halo is back. And so, thank you so much for watching. If you've already played Halo Infinite, what did you think of the campaign? Please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell icon for more. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you next time.